we have Adebo Onifade. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Dillon Apps, and he's also the founder of HRP Hub. Joins us virtually from Boston to show us how to calculate our tax. Hi, Debo. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Good to be here. Thank you so much.
Great. So it's going to be a very knowing Mr. Taiwo Edele is going to ensure, that everyone follows this new tax reform. But it should be a normal thing. I mean, you are in the U.S. and you don't joke with your tax. And sometimes you have to employ the services of a consultant. But you spoke with me before now and said, oh, individuals do not have to employ the services of tax consultants, that they can actually calculate their tax by themselves. So I wonder if you're ready, if you could show us, how this can be done by individuals to see how perhaps depending on what you earn, if you are an employer, of course, you still have to pay tax because of your business. If you're an employee, you have to pay tax. If you're in the informal sector where we have a huge number of Nigerians, depending on your income, obviously, you still have to pay tax. So we'll have Debo join us, but, well, for our DSTV viewers, you may not see that, except
you
you
come.
come.
My screen?
Yeah, just a minute, Debo, just a minute, because we have to lead our DSTV viewers to Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory, specifically at the Transcorp Hilton, where there's a General Lucky Rabo book presentation is holding there. That's for our DSTV viewers. But if you want to continue watching Business Morning, just jump on YouTube on the next stream, and then you can still continue here. So, Debo, please show us, using, of course, some figures that may not obviously be the right one, or it may not actually be a real one, how we can calculate our tax from January. Everybody has to know something about this.
Thank you very much. So I'll show you. So government released a tax calculator application, and then I'll show you that, and I also show you a free calculator that we at HRP have released. So the government calculator, let's use 2 million as an example. You're making 2 million. Okay, and then you click calculate. It compares the old and the new. That's a good part. Shows you that you actually you'll be paying less. From January 1. So now you're paying 2 million. You're paying 15,000 per 15,000 per month, and then next year you start paying. No, the old one is 15,500. One at the right. And next year you start paying 15,000. The difference becomes more significant if you increase the value. Let's say I go to let's say 10 million. You can have a greater difference. So you can see 132,000 to 138. Now, if you use our calculator, the good thing in our calculator is that it gives you a lot of flexibility to change between full-time and contractor, because in Nigeria there are two types of government taxes, individuals in two ways. As a full-time, the payee applies to full-time people, but if you have contractors, you can just do withholding taxes from them. So if you select contractor, calculation changes entirely. And if you select full-time, if you select full-time, your calculation is consistent with the payee law. Now, it also allows you to, so let me put 2 million here, 2 million gross. Now, because there are some tax components that are dependent on, there are some tax calculations like pension that is dependent on certain components of your gross. This allows you to have those components, unlike the government calculator that just showing annual gross. Here you can see just random ratio. You have the basic, you have housing, you have transport, and those ones are required when calculating pension. And so if you scroll down, you can see your pension is calculated. In Nigeria, we have two pension calculations. One is employee contribution, one is employer. The employer is a top up 10% of the housing, basic, and transport, while the employee is 8%. That's part of the gross. So that is calculated here, and you can toggle So this gives you flexibility. If your company is very small, they're not doing pension yet, less than 5, you can toggle, just turn it off. Then NSITF is also calculated. This doesn't show on the government application. I think it allows you to manually input it. Here the calculation is done for you. At NSITF, a lot of big companies remit that. The law requires it, and then you can also turn it off and on if you're in a company where that's not currently being paid. You have the NHF also, which is also part of the tax component in Nigeria. That also you can turn on and off. The calculation is ready for you, and like I said, this is free. Just making this available. Other statutory, and then now in the new law, there's a difference between the old and the new in the area of rent relief. In the old law, we had two reliefs: 200,000 naira, as well as 20% of the gross, or 1% of the gross, whichever is higher. Either 1% of the gross or 20%, whichever is higher. But the new law just gives you opportunity to it gives you one relief, 20% of your rent. However, if it's higher, if 20% of your rent is higher than 500,000 naira, you are only able to claim 500,000. That 500,000 is the maximum you can claim. That's the cap. So and then the law requires that HR should request for your rent receipt. There's still a lot of arguments about how HR is going to implement that. So if I have a rent of let's say I've given proof to my HR rent relief allowance, say 20 uh hold on. So let's say I put 20, let me say 10 million. Yeah, I need to put my rent. I haven't imputed my rent. Okay. So annual rent paid by employer. So this okay, so that's paid by employee. I need to put let's say I put 10 million there. Now the system calculates 20% of that eventually. So if I click on calculate tax, it gives you, but it's giving 500,000 naira cap, which is the maximum. So if you go to the right side, you see the tax calculated. Now, according to the new, so you see annual net salary that's deducting all those pension and so on. And then if you deduct the RSA from it, that is the rent relief, it gives you that final value. Remember, if there is no proof, the rent relief allowance is zero. You have to give your receipt, your rent receipt, your HR. That proof is required in this new law. That wasn't required in the previous law.
Okay,
And then
but let
this
me
is
just ask you. I mean, and I'm sure that, I mean, the details of it cannot be exhausted, one segment of a program. So
right.
an example is this rent proof you're talking about. This is Nigeria. If you want receipts, we know where to get receipts. If you want certificates, we know where to get certificates. So, and that's why I want to ask this question, the issue of manipulation of the system. So even before now, we know that even when some companies pay rent, I mean, pay their taxes, there are talks that they don't pay what they're supposed to pay. You just settle a couple of people, and then, do you see this new system? Do you see it curbing some of those excesses and leakages? Talking about the system generally, the reforms, and there's e-invoicing now, which the FIRS has already started working on. Do you see some of these gaps being closed?
So yeah. So the answer is yes. I'll tell you the biggest incentive in this new tax law, and it's not common for me to say positive about this government, but I need to be fair. This tax law is fantastic, fantastic. The new tax law, for example, 0 to 800,000, zero tax. Now, that would motivate many companies, because what has been the problem with tax compliance? One has been the cost of compliance. You have to hire an accountant, you have to calculate properly. Second is you're paying somebody peanuts and you're still deducting tax. So many companies are reluctant to even deduct because they're paying people peanuts. The old tax law from 300,000, next 300, by 2.8 million naira gross. You're already paying 21% tax. With the new law, 800 to 3 million is 15. So by far, this new law will motivate people to pay taxes because if you're paying people 65,000 naira per month, no tax, and then you have 800 to 3 million, a very wide gap, you're doing just 15%. One. The other
So,
was
Debo, because we
300.
don't have a lot of time, can we see your face? We know you're sharing your screen. Maybe you should stop. So, I mean, our viewers will know who's talking. Let's see your face as you give these concluding thoughts, about
Okay.
the new tax. So we know who's
So I was saying
talking.
that there's a big motivation for you to remit because the tax you're paying less tax, and 0 to 800,000 is zero tax. 800,000 to 3 million is about 15%. You have a big gap. So unlike the previous tax that was more complicated and you had to pay. So from about 0 to 18 million, 18 million per annum, the taxes are lower for Nigerians. And so I'll say that the calculations are easier. The figures you're remitting are as much lower than before. I think that's an incentive for employers to pay. And then that's part of why the other problem was calculation, how to is compliance. I don't, as a small business owner, I don't have enough money to hire a tax consultant, and that's why we created something as a free calculator like this, and we need to encourage other people to make such free services available so that small businesses can calculate free of charge. And again, because the amounts are smaller, I think there's an incentive to remit. So I think this will help, no doubt. In terms of you talked about, I think your second
Leakages,
question was,
leakages in the system.
yeah, yeah.
Leakages,
So
manipulation of the.
yeah, so again, I strongly believe that because the calculations are easier and because the values are smaller, I think more smaller businesses will be willing to. For the bigger ones, and let me also say other good things. Even for corporate taxes, you have a lot of things that have changed. 0 to 50 million right now per year is zero VAT remittance. You don't need to bother yourself with VAT. That is huge. You don't need to bother yourself with a lot of withholding taxes for small companies, 2 million and below transactions, as long as they are regular admin small transactions. That is huge. So
Okay.
cost of compliance will reduce a lot, and I think that this is one of the best things this government has done.
All right, Debo, thank you so much for that. Really appreciate you sharing that with us, especially the website, which is free to access, and anybody can calculate how much they have to pay for taxes and do not have to employ the services of tax consultants. Debo Onifade is the founder of HR Pay Hub, and he's also the Chief Executive Officer of Deal on Apps. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.